public entity loses control of its computing, it has failed in its responsibility to the people. It has no right to do that. So every proprietary program in a government agency is the result of having failed to carry out their responsibility to the people. And those proprietary programs need to be erased. They need to move completely to free software. But there's a second reason why they should do so. The state as a whole has a mission, and that is to organize society for the well-being and freedom of the people. That applies to all of life, but in computing in particular, that means lead society towards free software. As public agencies migrate, they will set an example showing that you can and you should migrate. In addition, they will want to buy support, which means people will create support companies that they can buy it, that agencies can buy support from. And these same companies will offer support to other clients. So when businesses and NGOs think about migrating to free software, they will see that there are places they can get support. And they will recognize that support for proprietary software is always a monopoly, but support for free software is a free market. So they're going to, in general, get better support for their money if they're using free software. So the state, by leading the way, can create the path that others can follow more easily. Finally, there is free software and education. Schools must teach exclusively free software. All schools of all levels have a responsibility to teach only free software. And there are 4 reasons for this. The first, the most superficial, is to save money. Now, free software does not mean it's gratis. Copies are bought and sold. But free software provides an opportunity to economize if you want to make use of it. If the school system gets 1 copy of a free program, it can make a lot of copies and then distribute a copy to every school. And then the school, and that's just using freedom number 2. Then the school is free to install this program in every computer and run it using freedom 0. And they're not required to pay for permission to do this because they're free to do this. And thus, it's an opportunity to save money if you want to make the effort. And of course, it's good to save money for the schools because they don't have enough money. They shouldn't be wasting the scarce budget that they have paying for permission to run proprietary software. But if we mention this reason, we have to say it is secondary. We should never let it appear that the most important thing about free software is you could save money with it, because freedom's more important than that. So whenever we mention this reason, we must say it's a secondary reason, and here's what's really important. And besides, some proprietary software developers eliminate the possibility of saving money by donating gratis copies of their non-free programs to schools. And why do they do this? They want to use the schools to impose dependence on society. Here's how their plan works. They deliver these gratis copies to the school teaches the students how to use them, and the students develop a dependence. And then they graduate, still dependent. And then the same developer doesn't offer them gratis copies. And some of these people get jobs, and then they work for companies. The developer does does not offer those companies gratis copies. Oh no. Their idea is the school should direct their students down the path of permanent dependence so that they can drag the rest of society along with them into dependence. It's like giving the school gratis needles full of addictive drugs, saying, inject these into your students to make them dependent. The first dose is gratis. Once you're dependent, then you have to pay. Well, the school would refuse to accept these drugs, and it should reject the proprietary software for the same reason, because schools are not supposed to make their students dependent. Schools have a social mission to educate good citizens of a strong, capable, independent, cooperating, and free society. In computing, the way you do that is by teaching people to be free software users. But there is a deeper reason for the education of the best programmers. Some people are natural-born programmers. At the age of 10 to 13, they are fascinated with computing. They want to understand how it all works. If they use a program, they ask the teacher, how does it do this? But if the program is proprietary, the teacher can only say, I'm sorry, we can't find out, it's a secret. And thus education is not allowed. Proprietary software is the enemy of the spirit of education. It is knowledge withheld. It should never be tolerated in a school. But if the program is free, the teacher can explain whatever part he knows, and then say, here's a copy of the source code of this program. Read it and you'll understand everything. And they will read it because they're fascinated. They yearn to understand. And the teacher can say, if you come across any point you can't figure out by yourself, show it to me and we can figure it out together. That gives our natural-born programmer the chance to learn a crucial lesson. That code is not clean. You shouldn't write the code that way. You see, natural-born programmers tend to be very clever. They can write code that does the right job, but nobody else will figure out how. That's not good programming. To become good programmers, they need to learn not to do that. They need to learn to write code that does the right job in a way other people will expect and understand, so that other people can change it later. How do you learn to avoid all those things that are so clever people can't understand them? By experience, by running into that problem yourself. How do you learn to write good, clear code? You do it by reading lots of code and writing lots of code. Only free software offers the opportunity to read lots of code of large programs that are really used. Then you have to write lots of code, which means writing code for large programs. But in order to be able to write code for large programs, you have to start small, which does not mean small programs. The challenges of the code for large programs don't even appear in small programs. So after you've dealt with small programs, then you have to really start by writing small changes for large programs. That's how you can begin in easy ways to deal with the challenges of large programs. Only free software offers the opportunity to write first small changes and then larger changes in large programs that are really used. This is the way you learn to be a good programmer if you have the talent to do so. This is how you master that field. And any school can offer the opportunity to do it, but only if it's a free software school. But there is an even deeper reason for moral education, education in citizenship. Schools must teach not just facts and skills, but above all, the spirit of goodwill, the habit of helping others. Therefore, every class must have this rule. Students, if you bring software to class, you may not keep it for yourself. You must share copies with the rest of the class, including the source code, in case someone here would like to learn, because this class is a place where we share our knowledge. To set a good example, the school must follow its own rule. It must bring only free software to class, and it must share copies with everyone in the class. If you have a connection with a school, it's your responsibility to campaign and pressure for the school to move to free software. I wouldn't suggest trying to migrate in 1 week. That would cause problems that could easily be avoided. But in several years, it can be done, and it's not so hard. There may occasionally be a small sacrifice to be made, but freedom deserves a sacrifice. So people have to be prepared sometimes to make sacrifices. Maybe there's a particular subject that they can't teach until someone writes free software to do that. That's just life. Sometimes you have to give up something that really would be nice in order to have freedom. And in the case of a school, you may have to give up something that would be nice in order to do ethical education. So if you keep looking for allies among the students, the staff, the faculty, and the parents, keep bringing this up as an ethical issue, keep demonstrating your own willingness to make a sacrifice personally. For instance, teacher, could we please work out a way that I can take this class and do the work using free software? I don't mind if it takes me extra time. I'll still do it because my conscience insists on only using free software. It's hard for a teacher to say no to a student who's willing to do extra work. But if the teacher does say no, then you have to say, I guess I can't take this class this year. I hope next year things will work out differently. Goodbye.